Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Grim Dawn Developer Streams. By now, I presume you've been playing quite a bit of Forgotten Gods, so if you haven't yet heard this track before, it's because you haven't fought the final boss, which means you have to go fight the final boss right now because it's awesome. How are you guys doing today? Zentai hype, yep. It's me. Final boss was awesome. I agree. I think it was one of our best bosses by far. How is Dawn Shard not a set? Primarily so we could put in some separate bonuses and it didn't necessarily align perfectly between them, so we could support different classes. But visually, we wanted them to have a matching appearance, because having sort of a matching full Dawn Shard look seemed like a good idea to me. Only thing it's missing is the Hammerdin. I mean, we already had a Hammerdin with the base game. You just need to get Targo's Hammer. Clairvoyant. Ooh, show us the new tooltip. Please, you'll pay in the Ugden blooms. Well, here's the thing. Today, I think I'd actually show you all 4 of the sets we're working on to change in this next patch that's coming out. And I think that patch will actually be out towards the end of this month. If not, then early May for sure. You're still disappointed in my last secret? That's fair. I knew some people would be disappointed. I knew it going in. Xbox One release date. I can't give you a date. I can tell you that it's probably coming later this year. It still needs to go to certification. There's still some tech work to be done. Basically, we needed to wait for the Forgotten Gods expansion to be finished, and then we could proceed further with that. Third expansion. I definitely can't promise you anything like that at this time. I can tell you that collectively, between all the DLCs in the base game, Grim Dawn has now surpassed 3 million copies, which is incredible for an indie company. Merit tokens will work with mods next patch, just like the programmer has told you in the thread that you've asked. Yeah, thanks guys. We are very happy with how Grim Dawn is selling, and it's all thanks to your support, spreading the word. So, there's 4 sets that we're doing for the next patch in Forgotten Gods, which will actually apply to Grim Dawn and Ashes of Malmith. So those that haven't been keeping up with our dev updates, we're reworking the Clairvoyant set, the Ulzuin set, the Kandra set, and the Bloodrager set, which coincidentally are sitting right here in front of me. Stop saying I'm supporting you and you didn't even buy FG. Well, why didn't you buy FG then? Obviously you need to go and buy FG. Don't change Ulzuin. Well, here's what I have to say about Ulzuin. I found that the original idea could be made to work if we kept forcing it, but there's a lot of other options for Firestrike already, and those that were hurt by the changes to Ulzuin, we've actually shifted over to other items, so you still have that skill bonus support. And instead, we've tried to make Ulzuin a lot more unique and interesting, and I'll show you guys in a bit. I think it's one of the more fun ones of the 4 that we've done here. It definitely brings out the meaning of what it is to support Ulzuin. You've spent forever making an ether array binder around Iskandra's, so to hear the change was startling. I can't wait to see Claire now. Building an ether array build around Iskandra's set would have probably been pretty tough because you wouldn't get many skill bonuses, but Clairvoyant with the changes will be awesome for you. Will the Hen Shrine before Eldritch Gate have its secrets? The Hen Shrine before the Eldritch Gate is used to worship Korvac back in the days when that temple served its purpose. So that no longer happens since, well, the temple's in ruins, and the people that worshipped it are dead. Any plans on fine-tuning the loot filter, some kind of and or conditions? The philosophy of the loot filter was to keep it straightforward, not to make it so complex that someone's gonna have to look up a guide on how to even use the loot filter. So there's definitely some more powerful options that people have been asking for. I'm not sure that we're gonna go through with adding them, because that might start to get way too complicated. A chaos mode? What items was the fire strike shifted to? I don't remember off the top of my head. There was a chest piece, some shoulder pieces off the top of my head that needed to get some bonuses. It was already well supported in other gear slots. Could I check Valdin Commando? Feels underwhelming. Besides, Valdin Tactician is way more powerful. I think we made some adjustments to Valdun. I don't know if they were necessarily Commando specific. The floor damage effect on Korvac ruins you, by the way. Floor damage effect on Korvac? The Korvac fight doesn't have any floor damage, so I'm not sure what you're referring to. If the question hasn't been asked or answered already, did FG meet or exceed your expectations in regards to sales? I will tell you that Forgotten Gods is doing very well in terms of sales. It has certainly already paid for itself in terms of development costs, so at this point we are making profit on the expansion, which is great. I think last we've talked about sale numbers on Forgotten Gods, it was over 100,000 copies sold, which is excellent. I'm not sure it really pushes us into, oh man, we absolutely need to make a third expansion, but we'll see how that goes. Will we adjust Father Kaiman's damage output? It's insane to make Korvac more powerful instead. We did adjust Father Kaiman's damage a little bit. I'm not sure that Korvac necessarily needs a buff to compensate. Black Scorch Covenant set is weak, or is it just you? Couldn't kill FG Secret Boss. I'd have to see your build, but something to ask on the forums, I suppose. Will there be any changes to Shattered Realm? Yes. So that is one of the big things we are doing this next patch. The first up is that we're actually rebalancing the loot distribution and kind of pushing it back more towards the lower shards. So it actually starts out considerably more rewarding, and then it smoothly progresses back to its same rewards that it has now at shard 60 or so. So if you haven't been getting quite up there, you're going to find the Shattered Realm much more rewarding. In addition, we actually shifted the difficulty a little bit as well. We lowered the health scaling, starting at the first shard all the way up to 60, and we reduced monster physical damage scaling all the way through all of the Shattered Realm. In addition, we've revised the monster spawns for bosses, such that you're not going to see some of the really tough ones early on, and you're not going to see duplicates of certain really tough bosses ever. So for example, Gravathul, with his double Dispel mechanic, you will never see two of him. Or I don't think you'll ever see, say, two Kaizens, or two Korvacs. You don't want to be that guy, but Kuti buffed the last boss a bit. Love the game, but you beat the whole FG in 3 hours on your Spellbreaker. Well, if you're really geared, then yeah, I mean, you're going to definitely kick the campaign's ass. The difficulty scaling on Forgotten Gods is pretty much on par with Ashes of Malmeth, maybe just a little bit harder. So if you already have a really geared character, then yeah, you're definitely going to destroy him. In terms of how he feels relative to other bosses when you're kind of average geared, I would say he's one of the hardest final bosses we've made. Or not one of, he is the hardest final boss we've made. You had a dual Ekadzul. Will that happen again? Nope. One Ekadzul at most. Any plans for new components? Nope. We think that there's way too many components already. So if there's a niche in components that you feel is missing, it's better to focus on improving the ones we have rather than trying to add something new. If you have Grimdawn base game, to get Forgotten Gods, do you need Ashes of Malmeth as well? Yes. Ashes of Malmeth is required to play Forgotten Gods because Forgotten Gods builds upon what Ashes of Malmeth added to the game. Hey, our game is awesome. I'm glad you think so. Alright, first set. First up, we have this Kandra set. Or sorry, Clairvoyant set. So I'm going to go over the tooltip here really quick for you guys. So it has been reworked completely. Well, almost completely. It still supports some of the skills it supported before, but it is much more focused as a set now. It no longer does sort of the generic bonuses it did before, and instead it focuses on vitality and ether damage instead. In addition, the set bonus previously was a cast skill, and all it really did for you is give you some mana, and so we shifted that around a bit. Why no background music? I don't think I had any background music in this level. Yeah, I don't. This is my test world, so it's very boring. I could turn on something for the soundtrack, though. Let's do that. That is probably better than just utter silence in the background. There. For some reason, I really like the basalt overgrowth music. What sets support Warlock? Well, this one for one. So you've got Ether Ray support, Reek Spirit support, and Doombolt support. Before I get into the rest of the items, let me show you some of the other benefits we've been working on real quick. So why Ether Ray is going to be more fun with this set, this is going to be a big difference why. With the next patch, Ether Ray will by default pierce through enemies. We had to adjust the damage numbers a little bit to make that fair, but it is awesome. And you might also notice that it looks a little different than it used to because we've updated its visual to be much more in line with our modern standards. And of course the Chaos version. Now you may be wondering, if you're going to be casting Doombolt with an Ether set, shouldn't Doombolt match the visuals? Well, let me show you how that looks. And yes, Doombolt also had his visuals updated. Let me show you Doombolt without the set so you can see how it looks by default. Looks way better. And that's not all in terms of visual updates today. Next up, one of your favorite skills, the hamster ball, no longer as much of a hamster ball. Instead, it actually warps the air around you visually. It doesn't look as obvious in this area because I don't have much terrain textures, but if you can see it on this monster a bit, you can see how he's just shifting around just a little bit. But yes, now when you're playing with Maven's Sphere of Protection, you can actually see your character, which I think is a plus. And we've actually done this sort of setup for every single shield skill in the game. So the crab proc for devotions, the turtle proc, various shield effects on items, all of those that had a shield effect before that covered up your character are now sort of the distortion effect that we have here. And I think together they look great. And yes, you still have those runes and the occasional shield effect that kind of give you that feeling that you do have a force field around you, but it's no longer as intrusive as it used to be. Now do the same for the lightning thunder skills. Let's see. You mean like that? You mean that lightning skill? We're having some fun with improving some old visuals, and I think you guys will like them too. Jesus Christ, in a taxi cab! Yeah, I'm really pleased with how the visual changes are turning out. Clairvoyant's hat! Oh, that's the Kandra hand. We'll get to the Kandra in a second. Save those visuals on the third expansion and cash in on them. I'm going to proceed with development as if we're not making a third expansion before we go and save things like that. What does percent chance of resist do? Which one? Can we stop killing builds, please? Your warlord can't do SR76 in 3 minutes anymore. Please fix. Yeah, we'll get right on that. So no Ether Chaos now on the Clairvoyant. Correct. That sort of duality of the Clairvoyant was a fun concept, but in practice it never really quite panned out. And what people ended up doing with the Clairvoyant set instead, he's using his generic bonuses like the +1 to all skills, the cooldown resets. So you weren't really using the Clairvoyant for its damage theme, you were just using it for its kind of a little broken generic bonuses. Is the Piercing Aether Ray exclusive for the Clairvoyant set? It is not. As I mentioned, it is baseline to Aether Ray. Could I share with you what's going to be in the next expansion as GD2 in terms of storyline lore, at least a bit? I'm not sure I should really talk about that, so I'm not sure when or if it's going to happen. And I can give you some ideas of threads we might pursue. For example, there's the whole thing of the Emperor, the capital, the Emperor's son. I mean, Olgrim seems to be a special guy too. The Witch Gods seems to have gotten their way. What does that mean for the future of Cairn? What will happen to the future of Kaiman's Chosen? The Death's Vigil. Can I tell you where in Forgotten Gods we'll enter the 5th roguelike dungeon? You will enter it in a place you can't access yet because it doesn't exist. Olgrim tapped the Emperor's wife, didn't he? Off topic. So, why did the Witch Gods run away like that when they were scared of you when you took care of Korvac? Were they scared we'd usurp Eldritch Realm from them? In that case, I suggest you kind of think about what happens when Korvac is defeated and what that really means. So yes, Iskandra set. Iskandra set, on the other hand, kind of tried to walk the line between melee and caster, and for the most part what people ended up doing with it was just playing with Kaldur's Tempest, which kind of worked okay. I don't think it was ever really particularly strong, especially when we had to take care of some abuses of Arcane Shield, or Mirror Variactes. I called it Arcane Shield because that's actually what it's called on the DBR file. So we kind of wanted to refocus it more on elemental damage. That's kind of Iskandra's thing, is elemental. So we brought that out with Trojan Skyshard, primarily because Trojan Skyshard already had 2 of the 3 damage types we needed, lightning and cold. So all we needed to do for that is add some fire. Trojan Skyshards red-orange now. They're not red-orange because it's an elemental set, but I'll show you what it looks like. You bet there are even stronger gods out there that you're not aware of, and you'll have to use the power of your mobile phones to defeat them. Don't you guys have phones? You will need them to take on the Ultra Gods. So, what exactly does Iskandra's set do to Trojan Skyshard? Let's take a look. You ready for this? You ready for this? Of course, now I can't get the cooldown reset to trigger. There it is. Any chance of improving some of the more confusing tooltips to more clearly convey what a skill does? My experience for the most part has been pretty much any game is that regardless of what the tooltip says, I still have to try it myself to kind of see what the range is, how it behaves, how it kind of flies, how it hits enemies. So I always have to try it anyway for myself. However, if you feel that there's a tooltip that poorly explains what a skill does, just completely, then report it on the forum and we'll take a look and see if we can make some improvements and clarify whatever it is that's confusing you. Yeah, Kandra said it's pretty fun, I'd say. Just a little different from the other Sky Shirt playstyles. It doesn't have that giant comet that falls with Trojans, but instead you get some physical or weapon damage in there. No, that's not the right weapon. Just have to give a shout out for the amazing transparency and connection Crate has with their players. Well, I'm glad you think so. We do try to keep you guys informed of what we're doing. And yes, Iskandra's Elemental Tear does add that little bit of elemental resist you might be missing on an elemental build. The tooltips have verbose descriptions of the lore of the skills, but very little about how it actually functions. Again, if there's a particular skill that you feel that could use improving, just let us know. So I think that covers the two Arcanist sets. But we do have two more. When will the patch be ready? Next week? Probably not next week. Maybe the week after that. Early May. Well, maybe end of next week. We'll see. There's still a little bit of testing. There is a pretty nasty crash that affects some people, unfortunately, that we are working on a fix for, and that needs to be tested. It might actually improve performance for some people, that fix, but we'll see. So is Kandra or Clairvoyant? Which one wins right now? I mean, in terms of visuals, at least. Show Ulzuin. I'll get to Ulzuin, don't worry. You missed Clairvoyant. That's right. Some of you joining us late did not even see the Clairvoyant bit. So I'll switch to Clairvoyant here really quick for a bit, and then we'll move on to the next set. Yeah, those of you just joining us, the biggest thing for Aether Ray is Pierces now. It has a new visual, and the Clairvoyant set supports it. Doombolt has a new visual, and it actually switches its appearance when you equip the Clairvoyant set. And the thing you might notice is when I cast Doombolt on this guy in the center here, that I'm actually hitting all these guys around too, because one of the bonuses for Doombolt is actually increasing its radius. And as you know, Doombolt hits pretty hard, so you can kind of figure if you're going to cast this on a pack of mobs, it's going to be a dead pack of mobs. Really hoping that conversion sets get these visual upgrades in the future. I mean, a lot of them already did, where it made sense. The Aether Ray visual change just for the set or default? Default. Although every version of the Ray skill is gonna get a bit of a visual touch-up once we're done with this patch. What is the item that makes ether ray red and pierces like that? Said item. So the red effect is actually the transmuter, tainted power. In terms of what pierces, that's just the base skill. You don't need the set for that. By the way, will the configuration skill pierce for enemies too? Yes, it will. Every single ray skill in the game is now a piercing skill. Stormseer Amulet, I believe, already does change the visual, but it will be more distinct. Ethereal pierced by default. When is this patch? Soon! Coming post-haste. Yeah, I was pretty sure Stormseer already made Ether Ray blue, but we'll make that more distinct with these visual updates. Last question for you for today, and a humble request. Can Mauve and not be entered or will be in the future? And request, add Olaron set in the future, please. Thank you in advance. Mauve and not entered in the future. Let me give you a little sneak peek. See if I can find it. How about that? So this is still work in progress, keep in mind, but I'll let you figure out whether you'll be entering the Mauve and not in the future. Now that Ether Ray pierces, is its damage nerfed? Yes, on the base skill its damage is actually going to be lower. We needed to do that because otherwise you'd have this crazy high damage skill that pierces through the whole screen. Drain Essence doesn't pierce through because it branches out to nearby targets, correct? Correct. What is the process of updating items and skills? Who and how do you decide what needs to be updated and what not? I mean, I suppose it's sort of a reactionary process. Some of the things that we wanted to update visually, it's kind of just looking back at the older things in the game and being disgusted with ourselves because we've gotten better at making that stuff, or we made some things that were done a long time ago that we just didn't have time to update, and now we finally do have some time to actually update them. Ether Ray looked okay. I think it could have been done better, so we updated it. Doombolt was in sore need of a visual update, considering how much we've done to lots of other similar spell effects. So we took this as an opportunity, particularly since we were reworking the Clairvoyant set. In terms of reworking the sets, the philosophy there has generally been to try certain playstyles. If they pan out, kind of make sure they're viable. If they're not panning out, then might be time to consider a rework. And we've done that on several items in the past. It just seemed like those sets in general have always been either struggling or they just weren't really that powerful or interesting to play with. So that's why we kind of decided to finally take a look and update them. Did Forgotten Gods sell well? Yes, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it has now sold over 100,000 copies, which is great. It is making a profit for Crate, which means we can keep making games in the future. You're just really hoping to spend a large chunk of your summer playing this on Xbox with friends. Hopefully we can get it out to you this summer. I don't really know for sure exactly when the Xbox port will be out. Star Wars Dungeon? What is lower damage for nerdy specifics, like 20%? I honestly don't remember, probably 20-25%. We had to reduce the crit damage as well. Don't get you wrong, but this is too nasty. Well, you're the one who's asking if you can go into the mouth of a creature. Thanos might be purple on the outside, but this is the view Ant-Man gets. This guy gets it. That mixed feeling of wanting new content but not wanting to delve into whatever that is. Any news about the city builder? It's turning out great. We recently got a website up and running for it internally. It still needs some content added to it, but it's getting to the point where we'll hopefully be able to show it off to you guys pretty soon. That's ultimately up to Madeira, though. Speaking of disgusting, those maggots falling off the beetles were terrible the first couple times you saw them. Good, good. That's exactly what we're hoping for. Does this mean Grim Internals is now part of the game? I'm not sure what that means. I mean, that mod still exists. Did Obliteration also get its damage lowered? Obliteration, I think, actually might have had its damage increased a little bit. How come the Shrine in Steps of Torment Ultimate is 10 times more difficult than any other content until one gets to Mama? Seems to be very off balance and has killed every character I've hit it with. So there's actually a story with that particular shrine from beta. There was actually a bug with that shrine that made it spawn just bone tear after bone tear after bone tear. So there's just a clusterfuck of these bone monstrosities that would attack you all at the same time, and that shrine was insanely difficult, but people actually kind of liked it. So we kind of left in a sort of more subdued version of that as an homage to beta, if you will. Is a chance of cooldown reduction gone from Clairvoyant set? It is gone as a general bonus, but it is still there for Doombolt. Is Grenado or Canister Bomb getting visuals too? I think Canister is fine. Grenado might be getting a look at, we'll see. Alright, I'm gonna move on to the next set here. Which character was that? There it is. You wanted to ask if we'll get a Cerberus boss in GD, but then you remember the GD Kraken, so you'd rather not because it'll be a disappointment again. I'm not sure what you're getting at there. But we wouldn't make a Cerberus boss because we don't really have a model rig for that. Third expansion. What is the one thing you wish you could do or redo if you had all the resources in the world? I would definitely redo the bounty system. What's the turn speed like for Aether? It's pretty snappy. Some items seem to give bonuses to skills that you can't use in conjunction with said item, like a ranged two-hand giving a bonus to Ages of Men here, or one of those other nodes in its line. If you found an item with something like that, definitely do report that as a bug, because that is definitely not intended. Any chance of Conflagration getting a little boost in damage as well? Really awesome, the beam spell that it gets left behind in regards to 90% of the fire stuff already out there. Well, Conflagration is going to pierce now, so its damage is going to be comparable to Aether Ray in that regard. Would we ever consider adding a PvP mode for Grim Dawn? Well, PvP exists. We're never going to balance the game around it. But you guys are welcome to make a mod that tries to balance PvP. Is there any reason to get more than 135% movement speed? It does actually give you a buffer against movement speed reduction effects, so that is an option. Of course, slow resistance is also a better option, but that is, I guess, why you could potentially go over 135 as a buffer to slow resist. Alright, Ulzuin set. So, Ulzuin previously supported Fire Strike, which is fine. Fire Strike isn't exactly the most dynamic playstyle. It's an auto attack build. It worked. I think it was okay. We tried to push it a little bit more in previous patches to improve its support. But at the end of the day, it was just okay. Like, I wasn't very excited about it. And I've kind of thought about what it means to embody Ulzuin's rage. And the answer to that is fire everywhere. Just fire from the heavens, fire on the ground, fire around you, just explosions. That's what it would be to worship Ulzuin with a set like that. So with that in mind, we set out to do this. And I'll show you the item stats, and then we'll get into the procs. Now this set instead supports Canister Bomb, and it's actually pretty fun. Not to mention that it actually gives you a ton of points to Ulzuin's Chosen, which, you know, a set called Ulzuin should probably support Ulzuin's Chosen, just by default. Now the bonus on the two-hander is actually what used to be on the head piece, that Ulzuin's Flame proc. Except we gave it a bit of a boost, and now also reduces lightning resist, and the physical resistance is higher. Anything for Blackwater Cocktail. Blackwater Cocktail is already pretty well supported, so I'm not sure what you're looking for. Was the legendary drop rate % increase with Forgotten Gods? Yep. Whenever we add more items like that, we proportionally increase the drop rates. So you're not hurt by the fact that there's a larger drop pool. Are we considering adding alternative advancements in the game for people who love playing their level 100 character? Reputation items are great, but once you hit best in slot gear and max reputation, there really isn't much of a reason to continue playing the build. Curious if you want more people to be able to progress their actual character beyond 100. Fundamentally, no. I personally dislike the sort of endless progression some other games have done. I feel that there actually should be an endpoint to where you look at a character and you're like, this is awesome, and I made it as awesome as possible. So now I'm going to move on to a different character, a different playstyle, and make that as awesome as possible. Alright, Ulzuin set in action, guys. First out, let me get some of these procs to happen before I start throwing canister bombs everywhere. Because who doesn't love fire raining from the heavens? Alright, that chain reaction expired. Now let's throw canister bomb in there. So there's fire beneath these guys, fire raining from the heavens, while you're throwing canister bombs. And sometimes the cooldown resets. I've gotten it to reset 6 times in a row, which just absolutely melts everything on the screen. So if you like to see fire everywhere, you just might like this set.
That skill's not ready.
3 in a row that time. You're not sure if there's enough fire will. That's where devotions come in.
That skill's not ready.
Yeah, get Meteor Short combined with this, and you can keep going endlessly. Pretty much, you can basically get the whole screen covered in fire most of the time, and almost keep it perpetually going. About sales of Forgotten Gods copies, are we happy with it like it did sell over expectations or what? I would say that it's pretty much on par with what we were expecting. It's done very well for itself so far. As I mentioned earlier, it is currently making a profit per crate, which is excellent. So keep spreading the word to your friends, guys, and get those copies out there. Are these changes to existing items retroactive, or do you have to find them again? These are retroactive. I don't feel it's really fair for you to have to rehunt the items you've already acquired just because we decided to redesign them. Are we going to expand a little bit the boss arenas in Shattered Realm? As of now, to me, they seem a bit too small. They vary in size. I think they're in a pretty good place. The most difficult shards, for example, actually have arenas that are essentially as big as the Crucible arenas are. Next DLC, Grim of Exile. Do Grim Dawn 2 finally. Finally? We've only just now released an expansion. How is it finally? It's more like maybe someday. If you were gonna make another expansion for GD, what would it be? I mean, if I was to make another expansion for Grim Dawn, I wouldn't tell you about what it would be. I think an ice setting might be fun. It would probably make sense, because that's kind of the only biome we haven't really touched on in terms of the base game. And there was the Astronkarn Mountains, but it's not exactly the glacier setting. You're thinking of getting the game. Would it be better to get the base game to check it, or would you get the DLC with it? I can tell you that the first expansion, for example, adds quite a bit of changes to even low-level items, and it adds Illusionist. And it might add classes that are interesting to you. But in terms of just playing and checking out the game, you can pick up the base game, you can play it, see if you like it, and then you can pick up the expansions and not be affected by that negatively. It'll just seamlessly apply over your existing game, and you can just keep going right into what you were doing, with new items to acquire, with new mechanics. So yeah, I suppose as a first-time player, best thing is really just pick up the base game, see if you like it, and then pick up those expansions, because those expansions are definitely a good deal in terms of more content, more story, more items, more playable classes. Will the meteor effect from Herald of Apocalypse and Ulzuin's Torch receive this meteor visual change, or is that being kept to Ulzuin's set? This particular visual is Ulzuin's set. Is there a quest where we can meet Basila again? Such a short moment. What do you mean? You're with her for most of the expansion. You think we're getting closer to the point where GD2 makes more sense than another expansion. That is honestly probably true. In terms of telling a nice big chapter of the story, it probably makes more sense to start with a sequel. Time to Bloodrager. We need more blood. We'll get to Bloodrager in a second. Let me just catch up with Chad here. Also, I'm going to throw some canister bombs, because why not? More fire! Have we considered making the game one big as act if we had another expansion like PoE did? Because at the moment, if you have to play for completion, it gets a bit bloated with 2 difficulties now of second expansion. So here's the thing. In terms of difficulty progression, I actually don't like the setup of having one difficulty, because then we have to actually make the game really difficult, even for casual players. I wouldn't want the end game of the main story to feel like ultimate difficulty for a casual player. I don't think that works, at least for our audience. However, with the addition of the 2 expansions, you actually don't need to play them to unlock the next difficulty. And finally, we've added difficulty skip tokens in Forgotten Gods. So if you want to roll in new characters, you can just send those tokens over to them from your main characters that have already beaten those difficulties, and you can just skip right ahead. How do we evolve the lore? Is there one of you that takes the lead and others give input, or is it kind of everyone throwing ideas kind of thing? Some of it is sort of organic as we develop the game. Things kind of float to the top that seem fun and interesting. For example, the best example I can give you that comes up whenever this question is asked, like Dela Thornsbury from Homestead was originally just a little flavor NPC. All I did was I wanted to come up with a side quest just to add a little bit more flavor to the world, where she wanted her diary back. And in that diary you get a lore note that talks about this, crazy story underneath the weeping oak. And people like that so much that they wanted to know what the next chapter is. So when we worked on the secret quest for the base game, I thought, well, why not keep going with that? And then we added her brother Dravis and his pursuit of power. And that kept building on until Dravis became this core part of the main story in Forgotten Gods. And I think that's kind of awesome. Similarly with Order of Death's Vigil and Kaiman's Chosen, those kind of came about organically as well. It was originally this sort of cult that formed in old Arkovian foothills. And all you did was you found like their abandoned homes because they moved on to some other place. So that was a thread that we started, and then when we were adding factions to the game during beta, we thought, well, why not expand on that? So we added the Kaiman's Chosen, the Zealots, the Fervus, worshippers of Empyrean, or Korvac. And then we needed something to kind of counter that, offer people an alternative, so that's how Order of Death's Vigil came about. And playing off of that, we already had this character, Urboruk, that was created with the lore of old Arkovia, so why not weave that into it? And then he became sort of the founder of the Order of Death's Vigil. In terms of creating the ongoing lore, I'd say that Midir is kind of the final say on things, since it was the world that he created originally. I've come up with a lot of the lore for the expansions, sort of the course where the story went, with talking with him and discussing what works, what doesn't. There were some ideas that were originally supposed to be in the first expansion, but we cut them because the expansion was getting way too big, and it was too big, even after we cut those things. So then some of those things ended up in the second expansion, some things just didn't make it in at all yet because they were too big. So yeah, it's sort of an iterative back and forth process between several people, and all the designers had their share of writing lore notes as well. What do you think of that idea, adding a pre-boss room to the boss levels of SR? It feels bad to do SR format on Char 70 and the first guy entering gets charged and the guys that go in after basically spawn with all the Nemesis bosses in their face. Coordinate going in, I guess. Adding sort of pre-boss room is probably not very likely. Alright, I'm gonna switch characters here to the Bloodrager. And I'm gonna switch the music here as well, since we've been playing the bass halt music for a while. Another question, you gotta run through the story each time to unlock the next difficulty each time. So I guess I actually already covered that. You don't need to play through the expansion content to unlock the next difficulty, but you just need to get through Act 4-ish, as we call it, the Locorian encounter. You have a question that you want to ask, but you don't remember what it is. Well, I fortunately will not be able to figure out what that question was. Nerf Ishtal Guardian, please. When it spawns 2 of it in ISR, it's really difficult. Yep, well, that's gonna be one of those bosses that doesn't spawn 2 of it. With those tokens, isn't it better to add some devotion points to them? Because to get all devotion points, you pretty much need to replay the skip difficulty anyway, which seems a waste of the token. There's actually enough shrines on ultimate difficulty to get all 55 points. We made sure of that. Would we think adding puzzles that open doors to secret rooms or puzzles that go into areas be added, like the statue puzzles where you need to put them in a certain way to open the door? Well, I guess you kind of answered your own questions. Yes, we have some of those puzzles. In terms of some secret stuff, maybe you haven't done the new secret quest. Playing Eye of Reckoning and all those monsters with huge hitboxes push me around. Is there a fix for that? Kill them? I'm never gonna catch up with this chat. No, I will catch up. I'm almost caught up. Alright, so Bloodrager set. This one did not require as much reworking as the other sets, but it did need just some tweaks to make it just a little bit better. So, first off, the big thing we're doing here is that we're adding Nightblade support for the set. Nightblade seemed like the logical choice to add to a bleed-heavy set, so that's what we did. The other big thing, for the Bloodrager bonus, the set bonus, it used to be that it would trigger on killing a monster, which is cool in the Crucible and works pretty well generally in the campaign, but if you're fighting one-on-one against a boss, if that boss doesn't have any ads whatsoever, that set bonus just doesn't do anything for you. So, to improve on that, what we ended up doing is creating 2 Blood Rage effects. First, you have Blood Rage on the set bonus. That now triggers off of crits. So if you crit an enemy, you're gonna get this boost to your damage, and you can actually keep it perpetually going as long as you're critting enemies. Second, we've added the same on-kill effect you used to have on the set bonus to the helmet. And what that does for you is, once again, it gives you a little bit more damage. It also gives you sustain. It gives you health regeneration, and it heals you. So every time you kill an enemy every 5 seconds, you're going to get that little bit of health. You're going to get that health regeneration, and once again, you can keep that going perpetually. And we increased the duration of it to 15 seconds, so you can actually keep it going quite a bit longer past a dead enemy. What that does mainly is just make this set much more predictable in terms of its damage output. You're no longer reliant on whether ads spawn during a boss fight. I've already shown Clairvoyant, that's the set you're most excited about. Well, tell you what, remind me before the end of this stream and I'll hop on there again and show you the Clairvoyant set. Are there any skills that activate off of pet attack? You know, a lot of people who run pure pet builds and don't actually attack themselves. Devotion procs can activate off of pet attacks, but in terms of item skills, no. Have you ever encountered any bugs resulting in insane enemy hits one-shotting people under certain conditions? I have not. And if you have a reproof or something like that, do let us know and we'll take a look. Will the Korba bleeding part be updated to compete with the new Bloodrager? The Korba bleeding part has always been more thematic than functional. I don't think we'd be boosting the bleed damage on there just to try to compete with a blood-heavy set. Korba is very effective at what it does. I'm not sure it really needs any big changes. Let's see if I can... Actually, let me get that proc here. So I've got my set proc, Blood Rage. And now I have Blood Frenzy as well. And I can refresh it by killing enemies again every 5 seconds. Have we got any details on the retaliation nerf? Just tuned in, sorry if it's already been gone over. I'm actually surprised no one's asked. The biggest thing changing with the retaliation stuff is that there's a few items that are overperforming. That's no surprise to anyone, I think. And physical retaliation is a little bit too easy to stack, which again, we expected was going to happen when we changed all the Pierce retaliation to physical. But for the most part, we just wanted to get it out to you guys, get you playing with retaliation, see how the retaliation mechanic works, and come up with some builds. As expected, some of them were a little bit too strong, but we'll reel those in, hopefully without hurting anyone else's builds too much or at all. Is that a bug when arcane mobs in SR can remove potion buffs? That's kind of annoying. Which potion buffs have they removed? Add some effects though on the character, kind of generic. So there is the effect on the hands. What I was actually thinking it needs though is a little bit of a sound effect. But yeah, some sort of different visual between the two effects might be good, and we'll definitely look into that. Alright, so I want to see the Clairvoyant again. Did we get the skill Falling Sword for Oathkeeper? Gee, I wonder when you got that idea. Undead have 118 bleed resist, so how do you fight them? By reducing their bleed resistance. Actually, gotta do one thing really quick here.
I sense turmoil within you.
Bleeding Warder will be kind of dead now. You mean Set gives physical resist? Yeah, but you can get even more Nightblade, which will be way tankier for even less effort. Usually have enough skill points to max dual blades and go dual wield. I don't know how something else becoming better makes something else dead. If you were enjoying the Warder playstyle, I don't understand why you can't keep doing that. Right, Clairvoyant set. So a quick rundown of the item stats. Will you show one of the new sets? I've shown... Oh, you mean one of the new sets? Not yet, because they don't exist yet. The artist only just recently finished one of them. Visually, I mean. And we don't have the sets entered into the game, so I can't show you because they're not actually in the data. But those sets are coming in patch 1.1.3. Can we make normal enemies do more damage and increase their health? They barely take any health from me and I'm an ultimate. Good for you, I guess. Congratulations on making a decent build. Grim Dawn t-shirts, please. Doing some merch would be cool. We just don't have anyone that has any time to do it. Alright, so big thing with the Clairvoyant set. First off, quick rundown for those of you that joined us late. Ether Array, by default, whether you have the set or not, can pierce through enemies. Other relevant thing, Ether Array, visually updated, looks way cooler. Pair that with the Transmuter, and you've got a Chaos Ray. Doombolt. With the set bonus, its radius is bigger, so you can actually hit all these enemies with it. And of course, visual update, and an Ether version of it when you're wearing this set. Without the set, still visually updated. But obviously it's chaos.
I can't do that yet.
Show the sphere, that's right. So this is unrelated to the set changes at all. We just decided to finally take a look at some of the older spell effects. And one thing that always stood out to us is how if you had a bunch of the different shield effects together, they would blow out and just turn your character into a light bulb. So to get away from that, we completely changed the way shield effects look. And now it's more of a distort effect rather than just this permanent bubble that's around you. And it looks way better. Looks really cool. I'm glad how it turned out. Who's the sound effects wizard among us? The sound effects wizard among us is the company called Skew Sound, who we outsource to. Any nerfs to Virus, Might, and Vanquisher set. What nerfs do you think it needs? No more Hamster Ball here, no. How are you going to read without a light bulb? I guess you'll just have to cast some Doom Bolts.
Soul's not ready.
When is this update coming out? Later this month or early May? There's all sorts of Chaos Doom Bolt support. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Definitely wasn't really well supported by the Clairvoyant sets. You didn't really lose anything. Does Chill Whisper set get a bit more support? What support does it need? Can we add melee to and support a Harbinger set to go with Wrath of Tenebris? Well, that wouldn't really make sense to have two weapons that are not compatible in the same set. Does our character ascend just along his journey as he amasses power, or is there something else to it, also from the lore perspective? If you've read some of the lore notes, I think the one you're referring to is Inquisitor Creed's speculations, is that the main character may be on their way to ascendancy as well. What comes of that, I guess we'll see. Is this Zentai? Yes, this Zentai. Hi! This is what I look like in real life. I'm not in fact the skull of an eyeball in it. Can I add a special godlike set just for you? You want to call it Dr. Doom's Doombolt of Doom. Well, tell you what, why don't you make a mod? And you can have whatever set you want in there. Would we add enemies that are half human, half animal that show their tits? Tell you what, why don't you make a mod of that? Why is lightning damage converted to vitality on the helm? There's already the modifier for it. Because first off, the transmuter you're referring to is chaos and vitality. The reason is that the other skills this set now supports do ether vitality damage, and it made sense for Ether Ray to match that. Will there be a preview of the next challenge dungeon? Yeah, when we are ready to show it to you, we'll definitely do a development update, a Grim Misadventure, that shows you a little bit of a sneak peek to what's coming up, and I think it's going to be a fun one. Can you make your character look like Riggs? Riggs is actually wearing a variant of the Baldir set. Please rethink making Wind Devils like Blade Spirits, so boring to keep spamming them. I think Blade Spirits and Wind Devils fill different roles, and Wind Devils are effectively a spell. How much floor damage will there be in the new dungeon? All the floor damage. Basically, the floor, ceilings, and walls will all be damage. So if you touch anything except the air... Actually, let's make the air do damage too. It's just, the whole thing's just damage. It's the damage dungeon. Is there any fix for people crashing in the Shattered Realm? Yes, we have a fix in the works. It required some significant changes on the code end because of what it was caused by. So it wasn't just something we could just throw out in a hotfix. So it is coming this patch. I hope that it resolves the issues for you guys. It is unfortunately not affecting everybody, so was a little bit more difficult to find than your average crash. But I do, as I said, I do hope it fixes those issues for you guys when this patch comes out pretty soon. Thank you so much for a great game and community engagement. Much appreciated. Glad you enjoyed the game. Can I tell you more about how the boss constellations are generated with the new patch? by constellations, or do you mean combinations? We've so the way bosses are selected in the Shattered Realms, we have several tiers. We have easy bosses, we have medium bosses, hard bosses, and very hard bosses. Well, very hard is actually a new category we've added specifically for this next patch. So certain bosses in that category will only ever appear once on a floor, and they will not start appearing until much later in the Shattered Realm. So that's actually part of the issue, as well as some of the hard bosses will actually spawning pretty low in the shard levels. So we just straight up just move them out of there. So you're not going to be encountering that occasional spike in difficulty. It's going to be much smoother. Stupid noob question. How can you identify if a skill is a cast or an attack? In regards to what? In terms of attacks like weapon pool procs and stuff, default attack replacers specifically say they are default attack replacers. Anything that involves swinging your weapon generally is an attack. Anything that involves you waving your hands and your weapon disappears is generally a cast. Are there any plans on bringing in more pets like the Will-O-Wisp? Yeah, we'll probably add more critters for you guys to collect. The reason we actually kept you guys off at 3 critters is specifically so we could add more in the future. Will we see the end act bosses eventually in the Shadow Realm? You already can. But Aura's killing teammates still not found. Honestly, we still have, in all those years, we've never been able to repro that on our end. Yeah, Force Wave is a little bit of a weird one because you are actually swinging your two-hander at the ground. Will there be more cold retaliation support in the future? If you were paying attention to recent patch notes, the last patch actually consolidated all retaliation effects into effectively 4. So you've got physical, you've got acid, you've got fire, and you've got lightning. If it's not one of those 4, it's not going to get more support. We'd like to keep it focused on those 4, so when you are making a retaliation build, you know that there's gear support for it, and you're not making some sort of really niche attempt. Who is the real endgame boss of Forgotten Gods, and why is it Kaiman? Well, he is the avatar of a god. Right, let me switch to the Kandra set here again for those that joined us late. Is that the whole set on? Nope. There it is, yep. So quick rundown of this Kandra set. We've refocused it on being elemental, and since Trojan Skysha already had 2 of the 3 damage types we needed, we decided to focus on that, and we gave it a little bit of a visual swap.
That skill's not ready.
Big thing on the offhand is it gives you a bit of elemental resist reduction that you can apply to enemies on attacks or on crits. Are we going to adjust Eye of Reckoning so that it will execute if your mouse is over a destructible wall or area you can't move to? Why would you not be able to move to it is the question, I guess. Let me tell you, Zentai, your game is GD is the most great and awesome ARPG that ever existed in history. You guys totally rock. You never played a game so much than GD and not bored of it soon after, or not even bored of it after 2,000 hours. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I definitely think the team has put forth some of their best work of this latest expansion. There's still great stuff to come. Are there any plans to support Rune of Callister a bit more? I think it already has pretty decent support in terms of its gear. I think if there's a set that or item that you feel is underperforming, then we can definitely take a look at that. Please buff Korvek, he's like 0.5 Kaiman. It's kind of interesting, because I had the opposite issue when I was playing just a generic character. Am I satisfied with the Ouroboros set? Sure. Seems to be doing pretty well. Strange, I avoided your question multiple times. It's actually a substantial problem. I mean, if you have a bug to report, please report it on the forum and we can take a look. And you need to give us a repro so we can see what the problem is. I haven't personally experienced any issues with Eye of Reckoning that I found to be substantial. We have been asked already, but do we have plans to tweak two-handers a bit more to make them more competitive? I think that is generally something that's going to have to be touched on a case-by-case basis. We have updated several two-handers for the next patch to make them a little bit more competitive, yeah. Any news on Titan Quest 2? Well, for that you're going to have to ask THQ Nordic, because we're not associated with Titan Quest anymore. Is it normal that every shrine is available? On Ultimate, yeah. Yes, Kandra no longer is focused on ether damage. In fact, it converts away from ether damage. Alright, we're running out of time here soon, so get your last minute questions in before I get back to work or something. And getting this patch out to you. Do you get a Fire Trojan effect? Well, Kandra is an elemental set, so you get an elemental look. When will this patch drop? Towards the end of the month or early May? My favorite character in Grim Dawn, in terms of like an NPC character or like my personal character build? I'm pretty sure you don't get every shrine on normal, elite, or ultimate. And if you do, then you should verify your game files because it's a bug. Where the fuck is the Paramore system? It's coming April 1st some year, for sure. I'm pretty sure. Is selling a Forgotten Gods considered successful? Yep. At this point, it is making a profit for the company, so it is doing great for us. You hope we sell more. I hope so too, because if it stops selling right now, that'd be kind of a disappointment. How many copies do we need to sell to do another expansion? I mean, it'd have to be pretty substantial at this point. How's the next project going, the city builder thingy? It's going pretty well. Hopefully Madeira will give you guys a bit more on that soon. What is my favorite lore character in Grim Dawn? I guess it's hard for me to answer that. A lot of the characters I've had a lot of fun writing were Korvac or Boruk. The Witch Gods were fun. Of the Witch Gods, Drig is actually my favorite. Even though I know that goes against the grain. Any chance of Steam Workshop support in the future? Probably not. We've looked into it and it seemed like more work than it was going to be worth at this point. Who is responsible for design of Alexander, and is this person a sadist? Well, I implemented him, but someone else told me what they wanted. And that someone was one of the artists. It's his fault. I'm sorry, not sorry. Why is Ulzuin associated with chaos so much? Because he got a bit mad. Something happened in his life that really threw him off the path. Is Korvac the corrupted form of Empyrean? No. If you pay attention to the lore notes, you'll see Korvac refer to Empyrean as a brother. Would you as a developer at Crate at this point would like to make Grim Dawn sequel instead of more expansions? I mean, from a business perspective, we'll do whatever makes sense. I'm not sure a sequel would happen anytime soon in any case. But in terms of storytelling, a sequel probably makes more sense than an expansion. If we did an expansion, it would probably be more of a side story, like expanding the world lore, rather than proceeding with the story of the Ethereals and the Chthonians. The Witch Gods still kind of fit. They had to tie into the War of the Gods. They tied into a lot of the threads we started in the base game and Ashes of Malmith. So that was a great story to tell, and I think it is a great point to stop on. But in terms of progressing the main story further, I think it would make more sense to do a sequel. Why no Witch God constellation? Because they're not real gods. Take a look again. There are Witch God constellations. Who is Gogo the Chaotic Melon? So during beta, we had some people that reached out to us, 2 instances of that, where someone had passed away and they were a real big fan of the game, and one of their friends wished to kind of put an homage into the game to kind of immortalize them and their enjoyment of the game when they're still around. The first one was Praetorian Zedley. It was actually a pretty touching story of someone's father who was unfortunately passing away from cancer. I believe it was cancer, and he was hospitalized for a long time, but he would ask his family to give him updates from what was going on the forum. The game just was left running on his computer whenever he couldn't play, just so whenever he did get back home, he could keep playing wherever he stopped. So we wanted to kind of give back a little bit to that guy and sort of, I mean, the best we could do. Unfortunately, the game wasn't going to be done in time for his father to play, but at least we could have that NPC in there forever, defending humanity against threats. The Gogo the Chaotic Melon was actually a similar situation, but someone instead wanted their username to be immortalized, which is why it's a gravestone. We really would like to meet Empyrean, the capital for Grim Dawn 2 or potential expansion. Seems like an interesting story to tell. It does seem like an interesting story to tell, doesn't it? Don't nerf my build, please. I promise you I will not nerf your build, as long as your build isn't one of the things we're nerfing. Isn't the next decision you have to make which game to develop the hardest to do in your business? I mean, that definitely has a lot of thought going into it in terms of what we should as a company do next. We already had discussed that prospect a long time ago and what that would be. So I am actually starting to ramp up on something else here that will hopefully someday be a product you'll be playing. When, we'll see. And what it is, we'll see. We'll talk about that when we're ready. What will the Overguard nerf exactly be? So, the big change to Overguard. First up, we're increasing the cooldown. We're going to reduce the stun duration scaling. Instead of starting at 100%, it actually goes up with rank. And finally, the recovery time, the shield recovery time, is going nerfed, but you can get some of it back with Markovian's defense. In addition, Markovian's defense is actually going to reduce the cooldown more, but it's also going to affect retaliation damage. So Markovian's defense is going to be sort of the tanky option. If you want to be a really tanky character, for example, if you might want to be tanking for other characters, say in multiplayer, this would be your choice. But if you want to do damage, then Markovian's defense is not going to be the ideal. And that was actually something that players were taking advantage of with the retaliation builds, is they would take this transmuter, they would get all the perks, but none of the consequences, because the total damage modifier did not affect retaliation. Now there's a new stat that does. What are my thoughts about RPG? Get endgame, endless dungeon good, but still a little boring. Well, that's where the roguelike dungeons come in. That's where the Crucible comes in. Nemesis bosses, secret bosses, super bosses. A lot of ways to play your endgame characters. Do you make market research to have an idea if it'll be viable when it comes out? It'll be years from now on. So there's definitely a bit of a risk when you start on a game project, because it's going to be so many years down the line. You have no idea what other developers are working on and whether they're going to come up with something that's very similar to what you're working on. That has kind of happened with Grim Dawn, actually, when development on it started. Before I even joined the company, Torchlight 2 was announced, Path of Exile was announced, Diablo 3 was released, right around the time when Arthur was working on his Kickstarter. So it's like, oh great, suddenly this genre that was barren is just full of options. These changes, have you considered buffing shield devotions a bit to make shield a little bit universally better? To answer your question, yes. Shield training is going to be a little weaker, and the devotions supporting shields are going to be a little stronger. So we're taking some of that soldier shield power and giving it to everybody. Plans on adding more cosmetic pets to the game? Yep. I think we'd definitely like to add more pets like that. Very adept at answering in a non-answering manner. What did I not answer? You're talking about the sequel stuff? Well, obviously I'm not going to answer that. Do you guys think about removing unit collision of Eye of Reckoning? Are you going to do that? Pretty sick of getting stuck on fat models. So Eye of Reckoning used to go through all enemies, and I actually had it removed because it was causing all sorts of problems. So no, we're not going to remove that mechanic from fat enemies. Are we and the other guys we see Crate founders or employees? Medea is the only founder of Crate. The rest of us work at Crate. What is the difference between flood and percentage resistance reduction? I don't think I'm going to get into that inside a live stream, but definitely look that up on the forum. I think there's a pretty handy guide that goes over how those break down and compare. When will we start supporting GD? We have several patches lined up for you guys, so there's still a lot to look forward to. How long we support GD honestly really depends on how GD sales are going. As long as sales are coming in, it kind of makes sense to keep things updated, so it keeps the community engaged and keeps sales going. So ultimately it's going to be a financial decision. What physics engine did we use? I honestly don't know off the top of my head what physics simulation was used. Might just be Physics X. Or it might be something written specifically for TQ. I honestly don't know. That's a risk question. I'd have to ask him. Alright guys, thanks for stopping by today. Hope you enjoyed this preview of the new set revamps we're working on for next patch. Do check back in the next few weeks, because I have a feeling you're going to have a new patch in your hands with updated sets, some new Shattered Realm maps, and who knows what else. So thanks for stopping by today. Thanks for bringing your questions. We'll try to get another stream going sometime in the future for you guys to come hang out with us, ask your burning questions, and we'll see you around next time. Take care.